Maybe we go live, maybe we don't go live. Hey, this is Michael. You're watching the Woodland Park Underground, and I'm going to replay City Council. So if you're bored crapless, or if you ain't got nothing going on tonight, if your Friday night's as lame as mine is, you can rewatch City Council with me. And who knows, I might give some commentary. I might be quiet. I might just watch. But if you're not doing anything right now, you can join in and watch City Council. You can comment about what's going on in City Council. Just thought I'd replay it for you on the Underground. They don't get very many views on their YouTube channel. If you want to go over and watch it from the City of Woodland Park's YouTube channel, I'll give them a shout out now. I think like 14 people have watched it. There might only be like 12 people watch it here. But nevertheless, if you're interested in what's going on in your town, you don't always have to go sit in the city council meetings, because we do have some technologies available at our town. And one of those things is they broadcast the city council meetings live so that you can watch them. And now you can watch them with me. And maybe April rolls around and you vote for me, then you won't have to watch them with me. I'll be on council and I'll come back and do a recap then too as well. But either way, here's a city council meeting that just went down this last week. So sit back, enjoy, don't get too bored.
Your name, if you would please, where you reside, and we'll go from there. Emily will get you hooked up.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Suzanne Snyder, and I'm honored to serve as a board member for two organizations providing free music to our community, the Woodland Park Wind Symphony and the Woodland Music Series. I am here tonight with other board members and members of the organization to make a joint presentation to the city. This past October, a benefit concert was organized to raise funds for renovations at the Ute Pass Cultural Center. In addition to raising money for that purpose, we also provided a cultural enrichment experience for the community as we had a band from Northern Germany come. The Woodland Park Wind Symphony is pleased to present a check to the City of Woodland Park in the amount of $1,850 from donations raised at that concert. In addition, the Woodland Music Series, sorry about that, is donating a lighting system valued at $7,000 plus expertise to provide a much-needed renovation to the lighting system at the Ute Pass Cultural Center. The combined donation of these two organizations provides the city with nearly everything needed for a totally new lighting system at the Cultural Center. This will be very important for the transition and the transformation of the center into the venue for weddings, to concerts, to everything in between. I would be remiss if I did not mention that both organizations depend on volunteers and donations. For any of you who have a instrument sitting in the attic that's gathering dust, you might want to come over on Tuesday nights to the Gold Hill Plaza next to City Market and consider joining the Wind Symphony. For those of you who'd like to support and learn more about the Woodland Music Series, we are actually having a mixer tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. It'll be at the Insurance Center here in Woodland Park. And there will be cocktails, and there'll be hors d'oeuvres, and there'll be music. So there you are. So whichever one or both fits your fancy, we'd love you to do that. So in conclusion, the board and the members of the Woodland Park Wind Symphony and the Woodland Music Series present these donations of money and lighting equipment to the City of Woodland Park for the benefit of Ute Pass Cultural Center. On behalf of both organizations, we thank you, and we certainly look forward to using the new lighting system at the Cultural Center.
Thank you.
Yeah, before you leave, just give me 1 second to say a couple of words, if you will. And it really speaks to leadership. About, 6 months or so ago, this council decided that we need to spend more money at the Cultural Center and do a better job of creating revenues and having a better bottom line. One of the things that went along with that, if you will, was we're going to have to manage it better, more like a business. And then we're going to have to charge a lot of people, namely the two organizations that you two represent, more money than we have in the past, because a lot of times it's been free. We've given a key. At the end of the day, the Cultural Center bottom line was not nearly as strong as it should have been. So we had to make some tough decisions, and I know our city manager had those discussions with you. And at one point, I know there was some pushback. Well, the music series and the Wind Symphony have been a huge part of our community forever and ever and ever, and much appreciated. So for me, the idea that you all decided not only are we going to, possibly have higher fees associated, but we want to do more for the community. I think that that's just outstanding. And I know everybody that's sitting on this dais has much appreciation for what you did, not so much what you did, but the approach you took and the willingness that you all had to give back to the community. So thank you very, very much for that. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
That is, Emily looks like she wants to talk. I don't know. Or I'm sorry.
Nicole.
I'm sorry, Nicole wants to talk. She's ready to talk.
Emily was like,
Emily's not ready to talk yet.
no.
Mayor, if I can,
Sure. No comments from Nicole Rott.
all right.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
I'll speak for Nicole. I think in that, it's all right. It's all right, Nicole. I just want to say, the city really appreciates. We've established this new partnership with the Wind Symphony and the Woodland Music Series into the future to start trying to come up with, trying to improve the Ute Pass Cultural Center. What I want to say is thank you very much for that partnership, and I think it's going to pay major benefits for the city in the future. The second thing I want to say is just to give Nicole some significant kudos for how we've turned around in just a short time that she's been in charge of the Ute Pass Cultural Center. This year alone, the revenues have improved by over $31,000 from last year. So I just want to give her some kudos for that. Thanks, Nicole.
And from all accounts, a joy to work with. So thanks very much.
Thanks,
Okay,
Ellen.
anything else, council? Mass exodus? Okay, we're going to move on. We have no additions, deletions, or corrections. So we'll move on to the consent calendar. Suzanne?
Thank you, Mayor Levy. This evening, we have two sets of minutes on the consent calendar. We have the minutes from the December 5th City Council meeting and the January 2nd City Council meeting. And we also have the December 2019 Statement of Expenditures.
Council, you received all this information in your packet. Are there any questions? Dar.
Again, I just want to point out that we're going to be approving expenditures that have already been expended, which sometime I would like to have someone answer how in the world, what would happen if we didn't? I mean, are you going to go take back checks? I don't think so. And that's rhetorical, unless you just want to respond. But
You want to talk, it's a charter requirement.
enough said.
Yeah. If you want to talk, I mean,
There's a charter requirement you can talk about, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so the charter requires any expenditures to be approved by council. The way this is set up is standard across the state. If you were to refuse, it would probably just create an issue in our audit in that regards. But certainly you have that authority.
but it didn't talk about approval authorities. The city, anything that exceeds contracts and anything that exceeds $25,000 has to come to city council before it's expended. The city council has delegated responsibility to me to approve anywhere between 5 and 25, and so that's where it stands right now.
That makes perfect sense. I still, no, I don't want to create an audit issue. I've been through those a few times in my life.
Just to comment also, the bills are paid according to the terms in the invoices and in the terms of the agreements that we are bound by. And so the staff of the finance department pays bills according to terms so that we aren't delinquent on anything. So if we had to come to the council for pre-authorization, might cause some issues with that regard. So it's just done once a month as a matter of convenience to the council. That's because we've had that question come up in years past.
I'm sure you have.
And to some degree, these are all budgeted items that are approved as a part of the budget and ongoing maintenance operations of the city.
Maybe it should be more of an acknowledgement that we did what we said we would do rather than an approval after the fact. But I understand.
Any other questions? All right, if not, anyone would like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Motion to approve as presented.
I'll second.
Okay.
Second by
Dar
Dar
got it.
and Suzanne.
Carr,
Yes.
Case,
Yes.
Levy,
Yes.
Nacarado,
Yes.
Sonier,
Yes.
Sawyer.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't know if I have a list yet, Suze. Public comment? We don't have anybody. So nobody that's signed up for, thank you. Is anybody signed up? There is. Good,
You could say who it is for time.
great. Mr. Stone, if you'd like to come forward.
It is on the agenda item, Mr. Mayor?
It's on an agenda item.
Yes, number 8.
Okay, terrific. That sounds good. And we'll get to that here in a second. Anybody else on anything that's not on the agenda? Okay, that said, we have no unfinished business tonight. We'll move on to ordinances on initial posting. And I know you know the process, Mr. Stone, everybody else. These items on initial posting usually don't take public comment until it comes up on February 6th or whenever we set the public hearing. So at the public hearing, you can speak in reference to that. Unless there's something specific that you don't understand then we can certainly take that now. That said, we'll get back to you if you'd like to speak here in just a second. In the meantime, I'll turn it over to Jason.
Real quick, the city council, we spoke about possibly canceling the February 6th.
We
meeting.
did.
So that would be something we want to discuss before we move into
Setting a public hearing.
setting a public hearing.
Okay, is your mic on?
So we've discussed possibly canceling the February 6th meeting due to professional requirements, and some other extenuating circumstances. So, and a lack of a large agenda at that time allows us to do that. So it will have an impact on the scheduling of that public hearing. And so just wanted to bring that up.
Council, I was going to take that up under mayor's reports, but since we do have this one item that would be set for public hearing on the 6th, if it's okay, we'll take it now and just have that discussion. Darren's going to be out of town. Suze what?
I'm here. I'm pretty busy right now with the election, and as of tomorrow, we'll not have a deputy any longer.
Okay, and what is scheduled for the February 6th agenda right now?
The CIF was the main thing, the CIF allocation. With council's permission, I will just notify the CIF committee and put it to the 20th. I think it's the 20th.
It is the 20th. So council, question is, do you have any issues with canceling the February 2nd meeting, the February 6th meeting, and moving it into all the items for that agenda to February 20th?
Mr. Mayor, I don't have an issue with it, but I would just ask of the mayor and the council that since Mr. Stone is here, could we take his comment on this issue tonight?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Let's go first things first. Then council, I need a motion to approve the fact that we're going to cancel the February 6th council meeting and move everything for that agenda to February 20th.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
Second.
And a second. Suzanne?
Thank you. Case,
Yes.
Levy,
Yes.
Nacarado,
Yes.
Soinier,
Yes.
Sawyer,
Yes.
Carr.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, then before Mr. Stone comes and speaks, I'm going to have Jason present this like we always do, and we'll go from there.
All right, so it's my understanding that this was on the last agenda as kind of a precursory item, allow council to provide feedback. There hasn't been any changes since that time. This ordinance is intended to solidify as best we can the intent of the council moving forward to direct staff to earmark monies towards debt reduction and put it in a specified account for that purpose for the next 5 years. So that's kind of the goal moving forward is council. And I don't know if there's any other comments you wanted to add.
I guess though, the direction that we've received from city council is that the city council intends to make this a commitment for the next 5 years. And that's how the ordinance is currently the language and the supports.
And that aligns with when the bonds are able to begin refunding.
The call date?
5
No,
years.
yeah, exactly.
Council, any questions? Kelly?
Mr. Mayor, I just would like to make the comment, and I think I've mentioned it before, that I would hope that, and I know we can't say what a future council will do, but I would like to encourage that savings continue into perpetuity and not stop at 5 years, but to continue to save and reduce debt as we go along until that issue matures. So I just would like to have that comment in the record and that we keep that in the forefront of our minds, that should be a priority for us, in addition to the health of our fund balance and other things as they come up before us. Thank you.
Sure. Anybody else? One concern that I have, we've talked about a little bit, is if we decide to designate $100,000 a year for 1 year, 3 years, 5 years in perpetuity until our debt is paid off, what are the chances, because some people have brought this forward, of reducing our mill levy at the same time? Can we do both? Is there a priority there? Would council like to, these are some things we should think about before we vote on it. Would we rather save that money through, through reducing property tax. I guess the big question is, can we afford to put $100,000 away in the current budget and also reduce the mill levy at the same time? So I'd like to hear thoughts on that. Maybe not today, but during the discussion 4 weeks from now. I, for one, I'm not seeing a way to be able to do both. But you all probably have some great ideas on how that could be managed. But taking $100,000 away to start with, and then trying to reduce property tax, I think could help seriously reduce services that we offer to our community. And so I just think that's something that we need to think about. We don't have all the numbers in front of us right now. Most of us are pretty familiar with our budget numbers and the increases in revenues from year to year. But still, that's the one thing that concerns me. I'm as big a proponent as paying off debt early as anybody. Can we do both things at the same time? And I'd like to have that discussion partially now or in 2 to 4 weeks from now, just to get your thoughts. And so if anyone has thoughts on that, we can chat about it now. We can bring Mr. Stone up and have his comments first. Does any of that make sense, what I said, Kelly?
Well, I would say that I think that should be in the forefront and the conversation we have absolutely when we begin the consideration of the budget process. Because it requires the analysis, looking across all funds and across all of our obligations and our debt and the calculations for coverage ratios and things like that. So I suggest that should be one of our priorities, just as we do each year, looking at our revenues, looking to see where we're at and where we stand as we get our preliminary assessed valuations from the county. I think it should be not at the end of the budget process. I think the question should be at the beginning of the process and should have the due diligence of that critical analysis done then. And it should be done each year.
Yeah, I agree. My thought was this council is going to make the decision on this new capital debt account. The new council is going to make a decision on the 2021 budget.
Mhm.
So in a sense, they're going to have their hands tied a bit, but you talk about priorities, this is already prioritized, in my opinion. If we pass it, everybody's saying this is first and foremost, right? Instead of waiting to budget process for next year and then saying, how do you prioritize this? Do you want to reduce? Do you want to do both? Do you think we can do both? Or should we just do one or the other? And so those are the kinds of questions that came to my mind. I'm sure you all had similar type questions. Valley?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, for 4 years, I've been going at this situation, trying to talk about both things. Certainly the mill reduction, it's a complicated equation. It's not a simple, division sort of a situation. And we've taken a late look at it, as Council Member Case has said, for a long time. We promised we were going to do it earlier this year. It just never was in our vision early enough. I think we can do both. What the exact numbers are, good question. We have to do an analysis early on, and some of the projections will be contingent upon that. I've kind of championed this for 4 years, and our new, we're talking about 100,000. Sometimes we might be able to put more in that reserve, and that combination will be up to, like you say, to the next council. But I would welcome that new council to look at combining both of them incrementally or in a fell swoop if possible. A lot of the efficiencies in the budget and in the operations administration of the visions of the community that the council puts forward have a big impact on what's possible. I think we are well advised to get the assistance of the experts in the staff to help us with numbers, but I think the mission needs to be really efficiency oriented and debt reduction oriented, along with a possibility of the mill rate reduction, which will really help. The impact on that is for all our citizens and especially our businesses. So it's one of the reasons I really keep harping on the mill rate, because originally we had 16.246 to principally pave our streets. And certainly we have other priorities now, but I don't see many unpaved streets. Granted, we have new missions, but I welcome the new council to take that initiative. Thank you.
Well, and I agree with Kelly in terms of the order of appearance. If in fact we approve this in 4 weeks from now, when the budget session comes, I think everybody would agree that the thing at the top of the list has got to be that discussion of reduction of mill levy. So you don't get to the end of the whole process and then say, well, we decided on this, and this. And so if you do that, I think you're in real good shape, Bill.
Every council member up here wants to reduce the mill levy. Nobody's arguing that, but reducing the mill levy, something's going to have to give.
The cost.
During this budget cycle, we actually did a really neat thing. We looked at our reserve and we said, well, if we have this reserve, this is what we can do. If we have this reserve, this is what we can do. And we had these tiers. It almost looks like we could go that route with the mill levy. If we reduce it by 0.5, this is the services, or that can be reduced. If it goes to 1 mil, here's the services. So obviously the staff would have to come up with what would be cut. But if we do a tier level, okay, 2 mils, these are the services, or these are the places we can reduce that amount of revenue coming in. And that gives us a visual, and that gives the community a visual of where this money that the mill levies coming in are, if we reduce it, is going to cut services to the community. But it'll give the council a visual to see where we want to reduce the mills. But we all want to reduce the mills, but we know that it's not like the school. The school had the sales tax coming in, so it offset the reduction of the mill levies. We don't have anything else coming in to offset the reduction of the mill levy. That's the difference here.
And I don't know that everybody, I can't ever talk for everybody, wants to reduce the mill levy. I know it's a great thought, but at the end of the day, we already talked about increasing unassigned fund balance reserve next year to 20%. Now we're going to take another $100,000 and put it aside for debt reduction. How much can we do? And that's not a question to be answered now, but that's a subject for your first budget meetings and how you're going to improve.
But if we could visually see what could be cut and where that money's going to come from, the loss of that revenue, it would be a little easier to make that decision.
If I can, there's one thing I'd like to highlight, because the assessor just put out the 2019 numbers, in that or 2020 numbers, I guess. But it reflects 2019. And that there was a discussion about reducing the mills by about 2. Well, actually, that's exactly what happened. If you look at it, last year we had about 80. It was roughly a little over 80 mills, and today it's about 78. So it was reduced. And so our businesses will see that 2 mil reduction this year, and they'll see it next year as well. And so I think they will. That was exactly what we predicted. There was the school district and the library district reduced the mill levy, and that's exactly what the businesses will see, the 2 mills. When you're talking about the mill levy, it's not just a focus on the city. It's 7 different taxing authorities that have that impact on our businesses and our more vulnerable populations that have to pay their property tax. And I just want to say that, there was a 2 mil reduction this year, and that's exactly what people were asking for, and that's what they got.
That's a,
Dar?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Dar.
You were, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm just very pleased to hear this part of the discussion, which means all the council folks here are thinking about it already. And whether I'm a part of that council that decides that next year or not, I'm happy that those that are here are thinking about it in advance. And it was good of you, Mr. Mayor, to bring that up. And
We
the
live
fact
and
that-
learn.
We do live and learn. It's amazing what can be done if you set out to do it in advance. And secondly, if you don't care who gets the credit for it.
I know this, I know the residents don't care. They would
No.
just like to save money.
Exactly.
Kelly?
Well, I was going to say that's one of the things that I've that I've pointed out too, is that it needs to be as Darren brought up, it needs to be all of the taxing authorities working together to find a way to find some relief. And sometimes it happens naturally, like this year it did. No one really took action to reduce their mills. They did the calculations and they fell where they fell. So I think if we keep moving in that direction, we'll see a bigger bang and a lot more relief from a community-wide perspective. So,
Paul?
May I inject? The reason your mill levies come down is because debts were paid off. What we are trying to do is pay off our debt. If we follow this course of logic and pass it on to the council as a step that they should look at and sincerely consider paying down your debt as early as possible without penalties, then naturally you will reduce the burden of taxes on our citizens. And also examining the efficiencies of our organizations, our services that we offer to the citizens, and make them more profitable is the correct way to carry on this discussion in the future and ensure that the citizens of Woodland Park and Woodland Park grow in a steady, organized way, thought out, and money's put aside for projects and paying down debt. That's all I have to say.
Mayor, if I can, I think one of the things that was discussed early on in this process when City Council gave staff direction on this was that the $100,000 is really the minimum that we want to put against this, and that, you know, if there are additional revenues, that we can actually place additional revenues against it, you know, as opposed to, you know, the requirements of city operations and or facilities or capital requirements. So, you know, I think we're really close to, you know, that requirement. I mean, we have a lot of needs, but I will tell you that, you know, I think that's an overriding need in terms of if we have additional revenue that it would go to increase the payment to the debt service over those 5 years that we've discussed, rather than, you know, I mean, always want to look for efficiencies, but I think there's certainly an opportunity to put more than 100,000 against this, and that could be something that City Council looks at as well versus other options.
And if we do it that way, we can do it on a year-to-year basis. Once we reduce mill levy, then it's reduced until the time comes that the community decides to raise it, correct?
Correct.
Mr. Stone, would you like to come forward?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Eric Stone. I live at 112 West Valley Drive. I do want to start off and apologize if my comments are premature. When I looked at the agenda, it said public comment may be heard, so I came out to speak on the item, and I appreciate the flexibility to allow me to speak.
Absolutely.
I think this is a really important first step for the city of Woodland Park. You know, Dave Ramsey has a very famous statement that he makes, which he says, live like no one else so you can live like no one else. And what he means by that is live within your means so that you can do great things when you're out of debt. And at $100,000 a year, expanded to the total debt of the city, it'd take about 200 years to pay it all off. So the minimum, I appreciate the city manager's comments that this is a minimum. I would really suggest that you look at more, because if anything like what's going on in the county right now, the county is going to realize a significant increase in property tax income due to the increase in valuations. I truly believe you should look at that increase in property tax and look at allocating all of it, all of the additional revenues that are coming out of that into future debt relief. Because imagine, right now, you guys are having to budget, I don't know, $1.5 million a year just in debt service. Imagine what you could do with $1 million a year.
900,000.
900,000. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. But it's a significant amount of money. Imagine what you could do with $900,000 unencumbered within this city. There's a tremendous opportunity to do that. And now the county will be debt free within about 2 years from its current obligations. And I know the city is further away from that, but I would love to live in a county and a city that are both debt free, because the economy is great now. It's not always going to be great. If you're debt free when the economy moves in a direction that's uncomfortable for cities, you're going to be in a much better position to be able to deal with that and be able to provide the crucial services that all of our citizens need. So I just really encourage you to look at this. I realize you cannot encumber future councils on their budgets and what they do, but I think making a statement about the direction is an important first step. And I want to give you all the accolades for taking it. And I'll look forward to seeing this move forward.
And I would agree with you, and I think everybody would, in terms of reducing our debt. There's no question, and the community would like to see that. That said, the community voted by about a 7-3 margin to build a swimming pool at the cost of about $10 million, and that's why we're in that debt. So when the time, that's a big part of it. It's about $600,000 a year. When the time came for them to make that decision, they didn't want to save money. They wanted, not this council, but they wanted to build a swimming pool. And so maybe that wasn't communicated as well as possible. I know when I save money and I go try to buy a new house for my family, the amount of money in my savings account has dwindled considerably. But I got a nice new asset on my balance sheet. Works a little bit different in municipal government. The point is, we didn't always necessarily make these decisions ourselves. They were brought to the community, and the community decided on building the pool. And, we could argue also that if we didn't have that $600,000, things would be a lot brighter for all of us. Kind of sometimes we got our own hands tied as a result of community votes. And that's just how, right? That's how municipal government works.
Right. Yeah, very, very true, Mr. Mayor. And, I do want to point out the county is building an annex onto the sheriff's department and paying for it in cash, because they're kind of living like nobody else right now. Nobody else in the state, certainly when it comes to counties, to be able to do that. And that's a vision that you guys should certainly look towards, is to be able to do business in cash, plan for the future. I realized that there was something placed in front of the citizens they voted on. That's about half the total indebtedness of the city, roughly. There's more there. So thank you very much again for the comments and for the opportunity to comment.
Well, great input and much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
And Eric, we do take donations from the county that go towards the pool. Thank you.
Yeah, we all donate.
Okay, if there's no other discussion, I'll take a motion to consider ordinance number 1375 and set the public hearing for February 20th.
So moved.
Second.
Second to I guess, Kelly. Okay, thank you. Suzanne.
Okay, sorry. Kelly's closer.
Levy?
Yes.
Nacarado,
Yes.
Sonier,
Yes.
Sawyer,
Yes.
Carr,
Yes.
Case.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, we move on to agenda item 9A, and Suzanne, we'll let you take this first one.
Sure. Thanks, Mayor Levy. As council will recall, we talked about this at the last council meeting. The charter, the city charter requires that every year the council determine and declare the instrument of notification to the public for all of our public notices and postings. This year, we are asking the council to approve allowing the city to use the city website only and no longer use the paper for our postings. We talked a little bit about this last time, about the money that will be saved, and also it helps us service customers better, because the paper only comes out once a week, and so we have to publish that item that posting a week prior to the paper when the paper comes out. So it's about a 2-week lead time we need to get a posting out for any council agenda. So this would be a very helpful tool for the ease of business as well as a cost savings, I believe.
Any downside?
Not that I'm aware of.
Council?
And if I could just add, there is still going to be some things that are required by state statute to be published in the paper when it comes to land use issues and those things. So that's still going to happen. It's just all of the other things that we don't require by state statute to publish that we would do this.
Anybody
But
else?
also, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Paul.
But also, we will not push aside that we will post on the doors of,
Oh, no, we will still do that,
And
of
we will.
course.
obviously notify the public as far as in advance as we possibly can.
Absolutely. What we, the city manager and I had talked about doing it on the website, but also linking it to Facebook. We have a lot of Facebook followers now, and we can say, link it to where they can go and they can look at all the public notices that way.
So you will make it easier for them to find it.
Yes, sir.
That's my objective. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, we are in public comment. If anybody would like to comment at this time. The audience, nobody? Okay, that being said, I'd like to hear a motion to approve ordinance 1363.
Motion to approve ordinance 1363, series 2020, declaring instrument for public notification process and method for the city of Woodland Park for the year 2020.
Second.
And a second, thanks, Noel. Susan?
Levy,
Yes.
Nacarado,
Yes.
Sonier,
Yes.
Sawyer,
Yes.
Carr,
Yes.
Case.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you, council.
Thank you, Suze. 3, 6, 9, 10. Okay, council, in front of us, we've got 11 charter amendments that the Charter Review Committee did such a great job of. And we talked about having a discussion about a couple things. One, is the number 11, is it too much for our voters to consider or not? And if it is, this is our opportunity to cut this number back to whatever number that you all feel. And so I'll start by saying that, and we'll have the discussion. I don't know, Jason is going to lead this, I think, and Jason Val. But before we get started again, those that were part, Stephanie, I see that's here today. Anybody else in the audience? I don't think so. But Stephanie Alfieri, along with a number of council members under the direction of Mayor Pro Tem Carr, led the discussion to bring these charter items forward that are all administrative, and thought it would just be easier for the community to do business, if you will, on a day in and day out basis. And that's why we have these 11 amendments in front of us. Whether or not 11 is too many and you create some kind of voter fatigue is a question we could answer today. At the end of the day, we've got to make a decision on these 11 ordinances. And so if you want to start, Jason, and Val can tag along.
All right, so I guess the intent, as I understand it, is to have some discussion about how many of these issues we'd like to put forward, if all of them or some other number, and then take them individually, because they all are here for a public hearing, and there might be folks that want to voice their opinion as to what they would like to see on the ballot. So having some discussion in advance as to the total number of ballot questions that council feels is appropriate to push forward. And then the second piece of that is which of them, if any or all or partial, will be the ones that do get pushed forward.
So we'll get input from staff on this. We'll get input from, we'll start with Val and just get a general consensus and go from there. And Val had it, excuse me, before you start, Val had it broken down in kind of 7 and 4 that didn't seem to rise to the top as much. And I know he'll talk about that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I want to continue what the mayor said and congratulate the committee that consists of Stephanie Alfieri, Bob Carlson, Darwin Nacarado, Catherine Perry, and council members, once again, Darwin Nacarado, Hillary Labar, and Noel Sawyer. We also had tremendous staff support from Suzanne Leclerc. Our advisory staff was key from City Attorney Jason Myers and City Manager Darren Tangeman. The committee had a report that we came out, we prioritized things, and we had 11 different priority ratings. We had a arbitrary cutoff at 7 with 4 on the bottom, but the whole committee advised to take all 11 forward. In the meantime, there's been some discussion about the length of the ballot, and so we're in, despite the committee's interest in putting all 11 forward, we get to talk about how many we actually would like to put forward, anywhere from 0 to 11, I guess.
You feel like we should talk about each one individually and then make a decision as to how many we want to move forward? Or do you want to make the decision as to how many we want to move forward and then talk about those? Doc?
As a committee member, I strongly supported putting all 11 forward. I'm a little bit of a mixed mind, having talked to several people since then. In fact, I ran into some neighbors this afternoon, and one of the ladies said to me she had looked at the agenda for tonight's meeting and was bewildered at all the potential amendments. And what's all that mean? So it took me an extra hour that I didn't really have to just sort of go through them. So I'm a little bit of mixed mind. I still believe that we should put all 11 forward, but I think that there is logic to not doing that and maybe splitting it between the April 7th ballot and maybe a potential for maybe getting more of them on the future ballot, whether that's November or whether, I don't know.
If we do get on a special ballot or if we get on the statewide ballot in November, the cost associated is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $6,000 to $8,000. If they're not that crucial, then we can put them off for a couple of years until the next city election. So those are the pros and cons of putting anything off. How about Kelly? You have any thoughts on this? I'd like to get everybody to buy in, or at least weigh in, and then have staff weigh in also and see what their thoughts are.
I have 2 that I do not support. Letter B on the agenda, the council stipend. As I've said before, if we're going to ask for compensation for the city council, I think we should ask for compensation for the city council. I think a stipend is, and forgive the word, it's lack of a better word, is petty. And I just think that that's confusing, and I just think it's not appropriate. The other one that I have, and I don't care if it goes forward, item H, the clerk of the municipal court. The municipal court judges work at the pleasure of the council and are appointed by the council, and I believe that that's a better reporting mechanism than the city manager.
Why did we decide to go down that road, Val?
This was presented to us from the city staff, city administration, in line with other hiring practices and consistency thereof.
If I can, I think it's not really reporting to the city manager directly. It's reports in the current structure that it is. That's the confusing part, right? Is that's not the current structure right now. The current structure is that the court clerk reports to the city clerk. And so the right now the charter doesn't align with that. It is mismatched, and that's what the focus was. Jason, if you would like to add.
So the way the charter reads, and this is why we kind of focused on this issue, is in essence, you typically in a council manager form of government have 3 direct reports.
Mhm.
The council has the judge, the attorney, and the manager. In our charter, the way it reads is you have a 4th appointed official who's not really an appointed official, but is appointed by the council nonetheless, and that's the municipal court clerk. And so whether that individual should report directly to the municipal judge or to the city manager. Right now, they're reporting, in essence, because they're appointed by city council, to the city council, although effectually they report to the city clerk. And so that's why we wanted to address that issue, is to kind of align that position with what's standard practice around the state. Typically in jurisdictions where you have a part-time court, so you have an employee here and the judge isn't, it makes sense to have somebody who's a full-time staff member, like the municipal clerk, oversee that position. And then you have the municipal judge's only responsibilities to preside over cases, but not necessarily administer the court. In larger jurisdictions where you have a full-time presiding judge and deputy judges, then it makes more sense to have supervisory authority over those individuals. But it's hard to supervise somebody when you're not here to supervise, is kind of the thought. So it wasn't intended to be controversial in any way. It was just intended to make the charter read the way that most do, and also to go along with our current practice.
Just to kind of give a little more background, is that our court clerk actually spends more time at City Hall than the judge. It's quite a bit, actually. So that's why there's a management relationship associated with the city clerk, which aligns with what the city attorney has said. The way, if it were changed, there would be no management for the city clerk. It'd be simply, it's not being changed. The relationship already exists. The management relationship already exists. It's just not congruent with what the charter says.
Can we make that then say, or his designee?
It definitely says that.
It does.
No, well, in our job descriptions,
Okay.
I sat with the court clerk yesterday and we reviewed this charter amendment because she was curious as to what it meant. And we
Okay.
took out our job descriptions. We took out my job description. We took out the court clerk's job description. In both of those, it clearly says the city manager or his designee.
Okay.
And in both of those. And she was
I understand.
assured of that.
It just, with the thing that came to mind for me was that, as Jason said, there were 3 reporting to, appointed by the city council, the manager, the judge, and the attorney. And so it just made sense to me that should be the judge versus the city attorney. So that was where my question came up. Thank you for helping me with
And
that.
certainly to the degree that if we need to add city manager or designee instead of city council, we can make those adjustments.
Okay.
As long as we make sure that's clear on second reading that those amendments need to be made, we can do that.
You follow my confusion, and I really appreciate
Certainly.
your assistance in understanding that
And again,
better.
it's council's decision how that structure works. Again, it's just if you have an individual, the judge is typically here 3 days a month,
Sure.
and the court clerk is here far more days than that.
Okay.
So in part-time courts, that's typically the structure for that reason.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Go ahead, Tom. So in our description on the ordinance, actually, the description under section 3 talks about exactly that, the city manager or designee.
Okay.
It doesn't say that in the question, but my understanding was we're going to put this sample language in. Is that true or not true?
The language as it reads is the ballot question.
Yeah.
So if we need to amend the language of the ballot question to add and/or designee, we can do that.
Do that tonight.
Correct, on second reading.
Okay.
If
Well,
this is one that
just
moves
helps.
forward.
And right therein lies the question. And hello, Kelly. I agree with you when you talk about number B and whether we're for it or not. I'm not sure even should come into the conversation. Do we want to give the community an opportunity to vote on these things, A, and B, if we can't understand this number H right now with the background that we have, tell me how the community is going to react and how they're going to be educated enough to make rightful decisions on these kinds of issues. That's my whole issue with these kinds of things. For me, I'd like to bring whatever we decide, whatever you all decide, makes no difference to me on the number. I get where less is probably better than more, but how do we educate the people to know the pros and the cons of these things before it comes to the ballot, right? Isn't that Isn't that the crux of the problem?
Yeah, we've discussed, at least hand waving wise, doing an education session, not a bias education, but just pros and cons, and here's what they are. A lot of this, of course, is in the report that we had, the council had, but the public doesn't have unless they ask for it. The city manager talked about putting together a podcast or something like that to actually go through those things. So your point is absolutely correct.
I forgot with our discussion about bringing it forward to the community and helping answer their questions. I'm thinking about that meeting and what it might look like, and I'm guessing the number of people in this room will be double what it will be that day. You know what I'm saying? So those are just my concerns. I want the community to make these decisions, not us. I think we've done our job. And so for me, I know there's pros and cons on the voter fatigue. I would just as soon bring whatever you all want forward to the community for their vote. Some I agree with and some I don't. I don't think that should be the determining factor in where we go from here. Would you agree?
I would agree. I have the same issue. I won't tell the number that but I think it's our job to bring them forward. The committee said they wanted 11. The council can decide anywhere from 0 to 11. But yeah, I'm not going to argue the case points that we've done that. I think what we can do digitally is put these things out, not to a room of 20 people, but put them on the site once we do that. And we're just a preliminary discussion there, and hit Facebook and the website, and hopefully hit a bunch of citizens. And when they call up and say, what is this? We can refer them to those hopefully well-done presentations.
Well, that said, then let's start with staff, even though we have these 11. Staff, are there any of those 11 that are there that you would recommend that we remove from this process? And then we'll go through the same thing with council. If we end up with 11, we got 11. If we end up with 7, we got 7. And like I said more than once already, I'm not going to fall on my sword for this. I think it's important that the community makes the decisions on these questions and not us. And so the more we give to them, in a sense, the better off. But Darren, what do you think?
Well, Mayor, I don't necessarily, I know you're trying to approach it by removing some. I think in terms of staff, I think we have some priorities that the ones that most impact operations, from my perspective, are the ones that we obviously see as a priority because they have the largest impact on how we do business in the city. And with that, I think F is one of those. Align the completion date for the annual audit to the current state statute. I think that's one that
Those are a must.
that impacts the city and something we would like to see. I'd also say J, in terms of removing the Personnel Merit Board, we've talked about how that has a conflict with the EEOC's requirements. And so there's definitely a operational conflict. The way we do business, if that isn't removed, it could still hinder the way we do business in the future. K is important, I think, in removing the charter specific budget process by city ordinance, in that we have a very, very large charter requirements within the budget. Those would be moved to an ordinance where the city council will have more flexibility in how they do their standard operating procedures for the budget each year. That could be anything from, from a biannual budget to a number of different ways that the city may want to approach that. And then lastly, I think L, from my perspective, a number of signatures required for citizen initiative to change the charter of the city of Woodland Park. In general, that would impact the city clerk's office most likely, but it also would provide some stability for our charter, our founding document as a city. So I do see those 4 items as pretty significant to the overall 11. I know that the city attorney and the city clerk who participated in the CRC also have their own perspectives.
And let's hear from them. But first, just on L, what's the number now and what would the number change to?
Your Honor, I don't have the ordinance in front of me. I apologize.
Well, about
I guess the crux of the issue, if you could look it up, is right now it's easier to amend the charter or put a ballot issue on the ballot to amend the charter than it is to amend ordinances. The logic behind that is if you change the charter via a vote, it is permanent until the voters come back to the ballot to make a change. So if something is ill thought out or something that is has awkward wording, we don't get to necessarily control as a council or as staff what these ballot issues look like. And so you get to live with what the voters put forward, and that's is intended. The idea being, if it's easier to change the charter than it is to change ordinances, that's where most folks would go. And once you change the charter, it requires a vote to change it back. Whereas an ordinance, if an ordinance turns out to be ill-advised or something that impacts the city in a way that wasn't thought of, city council has the authority after 6 months to pass an ordinance to fix the issue. Can't really do that under the charter. So the intent was to change the requirement to be at least 15% of the total numbers of the registered electors, where I think right now is it 5 or 10?
It's 5 for
5%.
this particular.
And it's 10% for ordinance changes. And then also to add, because charter amendments have such a large impact, that when it passes, it has to pass by a margin of at least 55 to 45. So something that's 49% to 51% wouldn't pass. So that's the intent.
and all part of the ballot question.
And that's aligned with the
Correct.
state constitution as well, correct? That part.
Correct.
Okay, any other staff or want to weigh in on any of the others? Darren weighed in on those 3. Anything else that you would not feel comfortable without?
I would, excuse me, I would actually echo Darren's comments. Those 4 would be my priority as well, as far as the impact to the operations of the city and also the risk. I think it's important for K, as far as changing, it doesn't actually adjust anything. The law would stay the same. It's just a matter of where that law is located. So that affords council greater flexibility and opportunity to ensure the budget process is what you feel it should be. And that makes it more flexible moving forward as standard practices change and allows the city to be forward thinking as opposed to bound to language that was created in the 80s. Another one with the personnel merit board, it's not something that's been utilized, but if it was utilized the way that the charter provides, it would lead to an erroneous result. And so again, it seems innocuous, hasn't been used, but it has a board that doesn't really have any authority to make a decision. And so it creates some conflict with the idea of at-will employment with the city. So those 2 especially, and then also for the reasons I just stated, L, to make sure that our charter isn't changed without serious due diligence.
Council, go ahead, Mel.
So this is where we got with the 11.
Right.
You can
Sounds like
see,
we're still at 11.
well, you can see how we came forward with 11. We did have 10 last time. The proposition to educate the electors without us making an arbitrary decision about things was hopefully what was going, the equivalent of the Blue Book, which it's not really what we're playing.
Just any information we can
Any
give to
information,
educate.
exactly. Pros and cons, not lobbying either way, but just all the pros and cons. Because we did a huge report about pros and cons already. So as you can see, this is how we got to 11.
That said, would anybody like to get off 11, or can we keep 11 and get a motion to approve 11 for the ballot? No?
I'm okay with 11. My concern is that generally when voters don't understand what they're looking at, they generally vote no. And so when you have this many to understand, few of them are going to be voted no, even though your odds are more towards no than yes.
You're assuming that if there's only two, that the voters are going to sit down at night and study those two because they have to make a decision. And
Well,
if-
they won't,
if
they'll
there's
probably
11,
fall
they
asleep by
won't do
3. Okay. So it's 11's fine with me. I just, there's a few in here that are not going to make or break the city. Obviously, I mean, C is not going to make or break. D is not going to make or break. There's a H is not going to make or break. So there's a few here that we can hold off for the next election in 2 years. But once
we can
again,
bring it back
Val
if-
said here, the committee spent a lot of time and going over the pros and cons, and there was a lot of work put into it. Val definitely did a lot of work on the side. But once again, it comes down to our little conversation here when we talked about we want to go through all 11. What order do we want to do them in? And the order was, well, we want the one we want to pass first, right? So are we still thinking we're going to get all of these passed? What order do we put them in? I'm okay with 11. I mean, if the council wants that, but
Can I get a consensus that we're okay with 11 and the order that they appear on our sheet is good?
I would agree with 10 of them. I'm okay with the ones Darren and our attorney has brought up. I'd like to add number C as a priority as well. And items C through
No?
L are fine.
So you just have an objection to B.
I do.
Dar?
I'm okay with all 11. I do believe that, I have a lot of faith in the electors.
God bless you.
And I believe that if they really want to be active in the city, if they want to be participating in the city, they'll vote. And I think Noel's also right, that the odds of getting a no vote on something that maybe they're growing a little weary is one thing, but I think we'll also get an abstain on several. Then that's just my personal view. But I think we owe it to the electorate to give them an opportunity to do that if that's what they want to do.
Paul?
Well, a lot of work went into this. I was not involved with it, and I do not object to it. I do not object to a B. I believe coming into this position, I did not understand the time that would be required, nor some of the expenses that I have taken on to perform my job and to be at certain meetings and things of that nature. It only makes sense. We're not talking a lot of money there per person. But please understand, if you commit to the job, you do the job, understanding what you are committing to servicing the citizens of Woodland Park, and also committing to the staff of the city here, that you will come as best prepared as you possibly can with the information given to you in the allotted time, and do what you said you were going to do. Honestly discern that information and give a decision. We are not judges up here, but we must discern what's in front of us and then give our answer like I'm being asked right now. I do not object to the 11, and I just wanted to clarify B. I do not think that's insanity, and we all agreed to serve this fine city and the citizens with the understanding of no siphons or siphons, however you say it. But moving forward, I think it should be considered and looked at very sensibly, with the idea of it not getting out of control, but just keep it in mind. I agree with the 11.
Thanks, Val.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I likewise am in favor of the 11. In my household, we start at the bottom, frankly, for exactly the reason talked about by my friend, Mr. Nacarado. And like him, I have very high confidence in people who are voting out there. I'm always optimistic about our population, our citizens. And I think we sometimes publicly don't give them as much credit as they're due, especially this fine town. We've got some wonderful people in this town and some very smart people. A lot of them concentrated right here in City Hall and the public works facilities and things like that. So my preference, because we went through all this work, is to put all 11 on there and let the voters decide. We came up with an order, and we kind of talked about it on initial posting. That would be my preference. I'm not going to make an argument for or against any of them. I have 4 of these that I will vote no on, but I'm not going to say what they are.
That's it, Jason. Can we take these all together?
I think because we have the potential to have differing votes on different items, if we could run through them individually, and we would ask for if there's anybody who wants to speak from the public, because it is a public hearing on these ordinances, to allow that. I imagine it'll be brief and we'll get through it as quickly as we can.
Okay.
Mayor, if you could, I would like to just state for the record, I think that the empirical evidence behind the voter fatigue, which is what this conversation started with, really focuses on, protest votes, exactly like Councilmember Sawyer talked about, and that, the more, what's the threshold? I don't know. But the more you have, the more likely that you have potential protest votes, which equates to no, right? And so that's the risk that you take by having more than, continue to have, have a long, really ballot in local government. The second piece is some people, some voters, when faced with a long ballot, sometimes are perfectionists in many ways and won't turn in a ballot. So you have the potential of having a low voter turnout as a result of that as well. So I just want to put that out there. These are the results that have been found from local ballots that have really long ballots. So just want to make sure that City Council understands that, and I think you do moving forward if we put all 11 on the ballot. I also we didn't ask the city clerk in terms of, if she has a preference either. I know it sounds like we're going to move forward with all 11, but she sat through every CRC meeting, and I wouldn't mind if the city council would entertain it to hear what she had to say.
Go right ahead. I thought I gave everybody an opportunity. I'm sorry.
You did. And I totally agree with the city attorney and city manager. We actually talked about this earlier today. Darren asked me which ones I felt strongly about, and they are the same ones, particularly the ones, of course, the budget ones, but the ones that I feel strongly about are the citizen initiative one, the votes, and the personnel merit board.
Sounds good. One thing I didn't think about until today, and that is in terms of voter fatigue. If I went to the ballot box and I've got to go over to the library and I feel like I'm pressured because there's people standing in line, I can see where that voter fatigue would come in.
It's mail-in ballot, right?
Well, let me finish.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Since it is a mail-in ballot, we have tons of time at home to research and do our due diligence and make a decision without having that kind of pressure. And so again, I get what you're coming from on the voter fatigue associated. I got a feeling that's more associated with votes when you actually go to the polls. But in my estimation, now the more I think about it, if I had that time at home and I've got a week or two to fill out the ballot, and if I want to be, as efficient and as educated as Val says our voters are, then I don't see the issue with voter fatigue. That's my own opinion based on being a mail-in ballot. Susan?
Thanks, Mayor Levy. I just wanted to, Debbie Miller would like to speak about a plan that she has regarding the education of the citizens.
Yeah, and You bring up an excellent point, and I think actually Ms. Miller can actually address something that might actually help with that process if all 11 were on the ballot.
So Debbie Miller, 210 East Midland, Woodland Park, Colorado. The Chamber Board has looked at these initiatives. First and foremost, let me thank all those who served on the Charter Review Committee. You gave up a lot of time. You went through a lot to do that and bring that forward. So on behalf of the Chamber, thank you very much for that. We've looked at that. We've discussed voter fatigue within our board. I've got 15 years experience working in state politics and knowing what happens with voter fatigue. But what we would like to do is offer, because it's our understanding that after the ballot is certified, that ties hands within city staff and others to be able to speak about these. And so what we would like to do is hold a town hall meeting. It could be done Facebook Live as well, to bring the citizens in and do an education process. Certainly, those citizens that sat on the Charter Review Committee could answer questions as well, but we would like to offer that to the public to help educate the public. Along with that, I would like to ask the city attorney this evening. There has been a question that's been brought to us that the particular charter review proposed number B that's on the agenda, there is a fiscal impact to the city. And as such, is it required that a fiscal note be put on that charter review so that the citizens who are voting and are reading that ballot, they're aware of the cost to the city? I could not answer that question, and so I brought it here tonight to bring before you.
I would have to double check. It's not a Tabor question, and which is what you would typically see a fiscal note for, because it's not increasing taxes, it's not increasing debt liability or service. But I think it's fair to the voters to have that information. We can certainly make sure that's provided. Whether or not it's required, I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to check.
We couldn't answer that, but in a town hall, certainly we could. But the question was, what if I don't attend the town hall? What if I don't see Facebook Live? How do I know what the fiscal cost to the city would be?
And Jason, just to follow up with what Jason said, I think the intent is for that an amendment is to establish a stipend. The amount of the stipend would be established in an ordinance, which would be there would be a public hearing. People would be able to come and weigh in on what that amount would be. There is a proposed amount, but that would be determined if the citizens voted that amendment in.
Great, thank you. But we are offering that, to do that, to book the cultural center, to bring the citizens in, and then do this as a town hall forum.
Thanks very much, Deb. Okay, that said, if we have all the questions answered, we start with approving ordinance number 1364. We'll take them one at a time. We'll get a motion. We'll get a second. We'll see if there's any further comment from council. See if there's any public comment, and then we'll vote on each one individually. Is that fair?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor,
go ahead.
may I make a suggestion at your discretion? We have the agenda which talks about the ordinance. I would suggest that maybe I could read, or Jason, or somebody could read the actual ballot question in combination with that.
Sure.
Yeah, if you think it's necessary.
And then if council, as for instance on H, we discussed previously adding the word "or designee." So that'll provide council one last swoop if you want to adjust that ballot language in any way.
Yeah, that was my thing.
I can take those
Sounds
notes.
Why don't you, so if one of the council members is going to make the motion to approve the ordinance, who's going to read the whole ballot question? What, Jason, you want to do that?
Yeah, you want me to do that?
Why don't you start? We'll
Okay.
start with approving ordinance number 13.
Neil's like, I don't want to read that ballot question.
question.
I'm going to vote on
Then we'll
these
get input
before
from
they
council, Get
do.
input from the public.
So you can see how I would vote
Want me to make a motion?
compared to how they would vote.
Oh, sure.
Motion to approve ordinance 1364, series 2020, submitting a ballot question to the electors of the city related to changing city's charter to create a stipend. I'm shorthanding it, but the ballot language or the motion language is in the agenda. Do you want me to read the whole agenda language? And so the ballot question reads as follows, and tell me if this isn't going to work, please. Shall section 3.6 of the City of Woodland Park Charter be amended to provide a stipend for city council members' service and set the amount thereof by ordinance? Yes or no?
I have a second for that.
Second.
We've got a second. Any other discussion from council on number B, number 9B? If not, any input from the community? We are a public comment. We're talking just about 9B right now. If not, Suze, we have.
So potentially what they're doing is they're not voting on their stipend, but what's going to happen is they are kind of voting on their what they can put there, because what's going to happen is then it will become an ordinance that they can then just vote on as a council and say, hey, if we want to give ourselves $100 a meeting, then they can give themselves $100 a meeting. Now, as someone who's about to join council, potentially, someone who may potentially join council, I am going to say, you know what? I'm not going to vote on this one because I want to see how they want to vote, right? I don't want my vote to sway. It's not going to sway their vote. I would say no to this. I would say that although their understanding is that there is not another city council in the state of Colorado who doesn't give their council members money, for me, it's just poor timing for me to vote yes, because there's a potential I become a council member. And you know what? I wouldn't be doing it for a stipend, because I have known for years and years that they don't make a dime. And so I wouldn't do it for a stipend. On the flip side of it is, I know how much time they do put in. And what Paul said, the guy that he's actually leaving council, I know how much time they actually put in to council. And I know the time that it's going to take to put into council and to put into these things. And so I would say, man, if they wanted to pay me a little money to come do that, I wouldn't say no to it. So I would vote yes on this, putting this on the ballot. That doesn't mean that when it comes to a ballot question, how I would vote on it, but I would put it on a ballot just to see the response of people. It'd almost be just to see the response of people, because this is what politicians do. They try to swindle shit money to themselves. The funny thing is like the guy who's talking, Val, he's like paid his band and shit. And the mayor has catered things for city council or catered things for council so that his restaurant gets paid money. So, you know, I mean, these guys swindle a little bit of money here and there anyway. So,
A motion and a second.
Nacarado,
Yes.
Sonier,
Yes.
Sawyer,
Yes.
Carr,
Yes.
Case,
No.
Levy.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 5-1.
so Kelly Case voted
I'll
no.
follow your lead.
Number C, approve ordinance 1365.
So on that one, Kelly Case voted no, but it still passed. I voted yes to put it on the ballot, so I would have voted with all them other guys. Kelly says no. Let's keep looking. This is really, we went through all of that just to get to the vote here.
5, Series 2020, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Woodland Park, Colorado, submitting a ballot question to the electors of the city relating to changing the city's charter to adjust removal criteria for boards and commissions and create term limits. The question on the ballot proposed, shall Section 5.3A of the City of Woodland Park Charter be amended to set term limits of 8 consecutive years for board and commission appointments, as well as adjust removal criteria? Yes or no question?
And you made a motion
Second.
and a second. Council?
No discussion. Public? No discussion. Suzanne?
Sonier,
I'm voting yes on this one. I'm saying let the people vote to set some term limits. Anytime you can set term limits, it's a good thing. The bad that outweighs this is we don't have that many people who want to get involved. And so when you set term limits, you limit the people who want to get involved. But I think 8 years is perfect. If you served on the planning commission for 8 years, or you were on the DDA for 8 years, or you were on any one of these organizations, I think term limits allows for less corruptness because, you know, if somebody's leading this board and they're there for 8 years or 10 years or 12 years, people don't know. A lot of board members flip flop, go back. They don't see what's going on. But if there's a term limit where they have to come to an end and they have to vote a new person in, you would always hope that those new people would see things differently. And if there had been some corruptness or had been some shadiness going on, you know, they could at least see it, make the alterations they needed to get things on track, and then go from there. Having term limits is never a bad thing.
Yes.
Sawyer,
No.
Carr,
Yes.
Case,
Yes.
Levy,
Yes.
Nacarado.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 5-1.
Thank you.
So interesting. Noel voted no to that. It was kind of a throwaway vote because it was going to pass anyway. So these are going on the ballot. These are just going to be ballot amendments. I'm going to talk about a lengthy ballot, which is going to be fun.
Item D, approve ordinance number 1366, Series 2020, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Woodland Park, Colorado, submitting a ballot question to the electors of the city related to changing the city's charter to remove all current gender-specific terminology, phrases, or words. The ballot question reads, shall the Woodland Park City Charter be reviewed and amended to replace gender-specific terminology, phrases, or words with gender-neutral functional descriptions? Yes or no?
Second.
Second.
This one's just kind of funny. I understand it, trying to get that political correctness. I understand the reasoning behind it. It's just kind of funny. Come on. You got to admit it's kind of funny.
What does it mean? Or can I answer?
Please do. Absolutely. Go ahead.
He or she.
So throughout the entire,
Man And there's a woman.
correct.
There's two distinct.
According to our charter right now, there's only men. And so that's the intent, is to make sure that it's not just the city manager and his designee, but we may have, or the city clerk and his job responsibility, because obviously we have men and women that fill these positions. So right now, the way the charter reads is somewhat dated and antiquated in that it refers to him and his throughout the entire charter. While there is a provision that says his also means her, it doesn't read that way. So the idea is it would be the city manager or designee, and remove the word his to make it neutral to whomever might be in that position.
But we're not going to change the order of nature here.
Correct. That's not the intent. It's just to remove any reference to gender.
Oh,
Thank you
Paul.
for that clarification.
I'm sure this question will have to be discussed.
Oh, Paul already had me. I'm looking at this going, what the heck are we doing? Paul's like, let me just clear this up. So we ain't trying to change the sexes. Hey, Paul ain't playing that neutral, trisexual, none of that stuff. But this makes sense because of the language of the document. It's just a language thing. Come on, man. It's not a big deal. Take out, make designee. It's crazy they got to go to a vote for this, though.
That's more at the town hall if it's
We're
true.
not going to remove any man and woman. Just clarify. I'm not going to have more than two genders. What was created? I mean, we have a man and a woman. And they've just
Oh, I
explained to
love
me
this.
that there is no provisions in the charter
I
to
love
designate
this.
that. And so I just asked a simple question. Is that what we're doing, or are we looking at other terminology to describe someone other than a man and a woman, his and her? So that's all I asked, and they
Thank you.
explained it.
Public, your chance to ask questions. If you'd like to come forward, sir, give us your name and
Sweet.
where you live
We got
and
some public.
ask us anything.
Good evening, Robert Zuluaga, 712 North Walnut Street. Thank you, Paul, for the clarification.
Oh,
Um,
wait.
My question is this something that's required?
Okay, wait a minute. First of all, you got to understand something. This is a political move. This dude is running for council. I don't know this guy. I just recognize his last name. I'm pretty sure this dude's running for council. I think the guy that just came up to the microphone's running for council, which if I'm correct, he's a graduate of Charis Bible College, maybe. I think this is the guy who's a graduate of Charis Bible College. They're talking about genders in this language, and all of a sudden now a guy who's going to run for council he wants to speak up on this. It's great. I love the politics of a town when you know it. Like when I know immediately, oh, that dude's running for council. So now I get to weigh his comments on the fact that I believe he's running for council.
Required according to where the state's moving in terms of multiple genders? And is this something that's required now in terms of some of the legislation that's brought down?
No, it's not a requirement at all. It's just a matter of removing antiquated language that assumes everybody who works at the city is a man. So it's not intended to add genders. It's not intended to specify gender in any way, shape, or form. It is not a legal requirement. It's just a matter of housekeeping so that the charter's not referring to certain positions as he or his.
Okay, so the whole issue of gender has become now a very slippery slope in terms of morality and in terms of identity. So once upon a time, he meant he or she. He was a very accepted, and it was not pejorative at all. So are you concerned as a city attorney that there's some legal ramifications for leaving a traditional language in the charter?
To leave it the way it is from a legal perspective, no. And like I said before, the charter does specify that wherever it says he or his, it also means her or hers. So the charter is currently reading legally. It's just a matter of whether or not there's some impact to those who look at working in government and feel that it's not appropriate because it says he all over the place.
Thank you.
May I? Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead after that.
So we're really putting functionality in there as opposed to any gender. So the city clerk, instead of he will, the city clerk will. In other words, it's a functional description as opposed to any gender specification. And there's no intent to neutralize gender politics or anything like that. It's simply making a functional document in the terms of one would do in service, for instance, on an SOP. So it's a functional change that has nothing to do with gender, really.
Thank you, sir.
May I, Mr. Mayor?
Please.
It's also inconsistent in the charter. In some places, it might say his. In other places, it might refer exactly to the city manager, or it might even say his/her. It's not consistent. So for me, sorry, a bit of a professor in me, I just want it to be consistent. And so I think it's part of the cleanup of the charter, just to make that consistent.
Thank you, sir.
Having said that,
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to say too, the language says here to remove all gender-specific terminology.
Right.
We're not adding, we're taking it all out.
Right.
We're not going to refer to any of it. We're going to say or designee, not his designee or her designee, just to remove those gender-specific terms. completely. So I think that might help in, getting outside those boundaries, if you will.
I get it. I mean, I get that part of it. Comment. Go ahead, Paul.
And that's why I tried to ask it in a simple question. I had asked the question before when it had come up. It satisfies me that it cleans up the charter and it gives, a clarification. So I'm satisfied with this. And I was going down the same rabbit hole you were going down, but that's not where I want to be. I just want to clarify.
I love how it takes them this long to get answers, though. I mean, I understand why, because when I first heard it, I'm like, oh, they did a good job clarifying for the public. It'll be interesting how it's received. It's cool to see how they explain it, but it'll be very interesting to see how people vote on it, because depending on the wording and depending on how they word it, it'll be interesting, because some people may take offense, just like a couple of them. So not knowing, and this guy that got up and talked, again, he's running for city council. He represents a very new but very prominent group of people that live here in Woodland Park. So it'll be interesting to see. He's definitely going to get the mass vote from the Caris population.
Clarify and clean up the charter and its language, not agendas and all that.
Yeah, well, I guess the voters are going to decide on it, but when you make it gender neutral, that opens the door to male, female, unspecified, and any one of the other 58 alleged genders there now are. So my thinking on that is, rather than make it general neutral, change it all to be he, she. And then you're consistent throughout your documentation.
What it's actually is, like, again, it's not going to general neutral, it's going to removing gender specific language. So that's, I know it's maybe a little confusing. It's actually absolutely going to be one of the things we're going to have to educate the public on. So we're not going down that road. As a father of two daughters who I'd love to see in local government in the future, and to know that only 13% of all city managers in the nation are women, I think it's important that we welcome women into the local government profession. And when your charter says just men, there's also that issue as well. So I think it's important that we fight for women, and that we have that gender specific neutral or gender specific language out of the charter. But it's up to the voters.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks so much. Thanks for your time.
Crazy. I thought that was going to be the easiest one. Okay, we have a motion and we have a second, and we've heard public comment. Am I missing anything before I turn it over to Suzanne? Okay, Suzanne?
Thank you. Sawyer,
Yes.
Carr,
Yes.
Case,
Yes.
Levy,
Yes.
Nacarado,
Yes.
Sonier.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, Val, we'll move on with ordinance 1367.
Number 9E, approve ordinance 1367, series 2020, an ordinance of the city council of the city of Woodland Park, Colorado, submitting a ballot question to the electors of the city related to changing the city's charter to remove penalties for violations of the charter. The specific ballot language shall read, shall section 15.16 of the city of Woodland Park charter be amended to remove penalties for violation of the city charter? Yes or no?
Second.
And a second. Any other discussion, council? Discussion from the general public?
If I could just add briefly, because we're wanting to make sure everybody has as much information as possible. The intent behind this is the charter is really an operating document for the city. So those who violate it typically, in all instances that the charter review committee could think of, were employees. And so in that regards, it should be an employment issue, and in working with somebody, if they're violating the charter, perhaps they don't work for the city anymore. It's not necessarily also slap on some criminal liability as well. So that's the intent behind this. It's not to remove our ability to hold people accountable for theft and other things. This is just specific to the charter, which is generally geared towards employees.
Thank you, sir.
You want to municipal judge talk to you today? Do you want to mention any of that or? Just you, okay, okay.
Do you want to add it? We talked to the judge.
Yes, we clarified that with the municipal judge today. She as well had a similar question, and she's
good.
We're good.
very good with that,
All right,
yes.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Suze, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Carr,
Yes.
Case,
Yes.
Levy,
Yes.
Nakarado,
Yes.
Swanier,
Yes,
Sawyer.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 6-0.
Val, carry on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 9F, approve ordinance number 1368, Series 2020, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Woodland Park, Colorado, submitting a ballot question to the electors of the city relating to changing the city's charter to align the completion date for the annual audit date to the current state statute. The ballot language reads, shall Section 9.13 of the City of Woodland Park Charter be amended to align the deadline for the annual audit date to the current state statute? Yes or no?
Second.
And a second. Council. Nothing? Community. Suzanne.
Case,
No.
Levy,
Yes.
Nakarado,
Yes.
Swanier,
yes,
Sawyer,
Yes.
Carr.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 5-1.
Before you move forward, I'd just like to say this. Kelly said no. I'm really interested in everybody. If they have a no, let's talk about it before the vote, just because I
I
feel like I
apologize.
might be missing something.
I kind of felt the same way with her experience and all that.
Yeah, I feel like I
But-
might have missed something.
I'm just trying to.
I didn't say anything.
No, you
I
didn't.
didn't quantify that.
You didn't. You
Um,
said no, and that's fine, but moving forward, because it's too late now, if you're not in favor, we just like to have, some conversation as to why, because you might change all of our minds.
And that's a
My
true statement,
apologies.
and that's why we sit here,
That's
to
exactly
work
right.
with each other and to understand each other's issues. And I'm glad that you have a stance on things, and obviously that information.
Can I
If I can, I understand why Councilmember Case had voted in the negative. I mean, she worked in the finance department for many years and understands. She believes we can make the date of the audit as it currently stands. I think the intent really is to align it with what the state requirement is. Once we have to do this by a deadline with the state as well, and so we have a different one within our charter that conflicts with that. But I believe that is Councilmember
Yes.
Case's rationale.
It is.
Okay.
Okay, we'll move forward.
So I want to mention that I object to some of these too, but I'm only voting to move them forward to the electors to choose, personally. 9G, approve ordinance number 1369, Series 2020, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Woodland Park, Colorado, submitting a ballot question to the electors of the city relating to changing the city's charter to clarify the department employment responsibilities of the chief of police. The ballot language reading as follows. Shall section 9.4.9B of the City of Woodland Park Charter be amended to clarify the department employment responsibilities of the chief of police? Yes or no?
Second.
Council. Community. Suzanne.
Levy,
Yes.
Nakarado,
Yes.
Swanier,
Yes,
Sawyer,
Yes.
Carr,
Yes.
Case.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, Val.
So this one will have the change in it, Val.
Yes, thank you. Okay. 9H, approve ordinance number 1370, Series 2020, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Woodland Park, Colorado, submitting a ballot question to the electors of the city related to changing the city's charter to have the clerk of the municipal court report to the city manager of ballot
Or
language.
designee.
Instead, I'm sorry, instead,
Or
what it-
designee instead of city council.
city manager or designee instead of city council.
Correct. Is that what you want to know? The designee?
I just didn't say
We
anything.
discussed,
My
and I
bad.
think that was
I would have
relayed
voted
to
no
the
simply because
clerk.
Good.
it had to do with
Thank
the
you.
police chief.
The ballot language reading,
I can still vote
correct
no.
me if I'm wrong, shall section 6.2H of the City of Woodland Park Charter be amended to have clerk of the municipal court report to the city manager or designee instead of city council? Yes or no?
Second.
Council? Public?
There's just a little bit of
Levy,
Yes.
yes.
Nacarado?
Yes.
Yes.
Sonier,
Yes.
Sawyer,
Yes.
Carr,
Yes.
Case.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 6-0.
I would have voted yes.
7 down.
It'll be interesting.
Number 9,
though.
I,
Yeah, there. See, you're already.
You want me to read for a while?
thank you. Number 9, I approve ordinance 1371, series 2020, an ordinance of the city council of the city of Woodland Park, Colorado, submitting a ballot question to the electors of the city relating to changing the city's charter to use state standards for qualifications of elected and appointed officials. The ballot language states, shall section 3.4 of the city of Woodland Park Charter be amended to use state standards for qualifications of elected and appointed officials? Yes or no?
Second.
What are state
Mayor,
standards?
I'm sorry, I don't mean to. This is somewhat complicated in terms of it doesn't explain kind of why the language may need to be changed. Jason, if you don't mind, I think it'd be good for the public's purpose to kind of understand what that is.
Yeah, so the ordinance, it reflects the actual changes and where that would change. Under state statute, the age to vote is and be a member of council or any other appointed board is 18. Our charter currently has it at 21. Part of the reason we focus on this particularly is one of the requirements, most in the state statute, in order to be on council, you have to be a resident of the city for a year and typically a registered voter and eligible to vote, which means you're a citizen. Our charter requires a certain number of years that you have to be a U.S. citizen, 7 years to be a U.S. citizen before you're eligible to hold a seat on council. And so that's one of the major reasons for this change is removing that requirement of being in the United States for 7 years in order to hold office here in Woodland Park. I don't know why that was put into the charter back in the 70s or 80s, but that's the way it is. And it's, dare I say, somewhat discriminatory to those that are new to the country and new to the community. So it's not a state requirement that's there. And so that's why we wanted to align those.
And there's also an age modification too.
Correct, from 21 to 18.
Do we have a second?
There you go.
Yeah, we have a second.
Was it you, Newell?
Second.
And any other discussion? Public? One thing I will say, Deb, before we move forward, and I'm sure this is part of your plan, but I think Jason's going to be your greatest resource prior to the time you have that educational session. So I look forward to the two of you working together, making sure we're all on the same page.
And I would add for the public that's watching, all of the ordinances, with the exception of the discussion about removing gender language, because that would make these ordinances horrifically long. All of the other ordinances that are on these 11 have specifically exactly what's changing in the charter and exactly what's going to change in the ordinances. So it's clear if you do the homework as to exactly what we're intending to change.
Thank you. Suzanne?
Nacarado,
Yes.
Sonier,
Yes.
Sawyer,
Yes.
Yes.
Carr,
Yes.
Case,
Yes.
Levy.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, item J.
9J, approve ordinance number 1372, series 2020, an ordinance of the city council of the city of Woodland Park, Colorado, submitting a ballot question to the electors of the city relating to changing the city's charter to remove the personnel merit board with ballot language as follows. Shall section 4.3B and section 13.1 through section 13.4 of the Woodland Park City Charter be amended to remove the Personnel Merit Board, yes or no?
Second.
Second by Rob.
Well, excuse me, but as the only member of the Personnel Board,
You feel you have the right. You have the right. Okay, any other discussion, council?
So you're firing
Public?
yourself. Is that what you're doing?
Suzanne?
Sonier,
Yes.
Sawyer,
Yes.
Carr,
Yes.
Case,
Yes.
Levy,
Yes.
Nakarado.
yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 6-0.
You should have voted no.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, number 9K, approve ordinance number 1373, series 2020, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Woodland Park, Colorado, submitting a ballot question to the electors of the city related to changing the city's charter to remove charter-specific budget process to city ordinances. Ballot language as follows. Shall the City of Woodland Park Charter be amended to remove specific requirements from the charter by recodifying the requirements for the budget into the city ordinances for future flexibility and best practices? Yes or no?
Second.
Gotcha. Council? Nada. Public? Suzanne?
Carr,
Yes.
Case,
Yes.
Levy,
Yes.
Nakarado,
Yes.
Sonier,
Yes.
Sawyer.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Number 9L, approve ordinance number 1374, series 2020, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Woodland Park, Colorado, submitting a ballot question to the electors of the city relating to increase the number of signatures required for a citizen initiative to change the charter of the City of Woodland Park. With ballot language as follows. Shall section 8.1 of the City of Woodland Park Charter be amended to modify the standard for citizen-initiated charter and municipal code modification petitions? Yes or no?
Second.
Council? Nothing? Community? Come right on up.
Robert Zuluaga, 712 North Walnut. Thank you for taking, I'm just needing some clarification on this. Firstly, is there, as we go through these, what's the cost improvement efficiencies to the city of some of these changes? Is there any measurable cost savings with some of these? Is that what, and like you said, there was 4 of them that the city staff thought were important. Is there cost savings to the people for that?
I do think that, have we done a fiscal note and determined what the potential savings or efficiencies? No, but I think it's pretty clear. Just one example, the one that just passed, the city staff committed about 7 meetings in this last budget year to deliberating on, a number of issues with the budget. This gives more flexibility to the city council to potentially go into a biennial budget where they deliberate one time a year and they come in the following year and they actually update the revenues and expenditures, but they don't have to, they're looking further into a 2-year budget. So they are more visionary. They're looking longer term. I do think that saves both staff and city council time, which is money. And so, yes, I do think there is savings associated with several of these. I just think that's one that I would identify first.
And I guess I would add to the Personnel Merit Board, given that we're an at-will employer, the Personnel Merit Board kind of creates an appeal process that typically you wouldn't have with at-will employment. So to put a specific number on what that would mean in savings to the city and citizens, it's difficult to do. However, removing it, I can say confidently would remove potential legal risks. And how do you put a number on that? I couldn't say. And I guess you're up here on Part L.
On L, yeah.
Again, this is more or less to ensure that the citizen-initiated charter changes are a little more difficult to do. If the citizens want to change the charter, they obviously have the ability to do that. We just want to make sure that those things are well thought out and well vetted and before, and have broad support before they're brought to the voters, because you have issues of voter confusion, et cetera. The process that we're taking, where the council puts things to the ballot, have already been vetted by city staff, myself as an attorney, city council, and they've gone through a long process. And so it's just a matter of protecting the city's governing constitutional document, as it were, moving forward. It's hard to say. Again, we could have who knows what type of ballot issues we could see into the future that this would protect against.
As a citizen, what I saw in this is that you're increasing the percentage that of petition signatures that a citizen's going to require. And it just seemed like you're stretching the distance from citizen participation into the process. And I wonder if there's not just a way of meeting with the citizen before the initiative is proposed to iron out some of the language of confusion or whatever, rather than creating this big distance between, like, for example, it says 15% of the total registered voters. How many of the registered voters statistically actually vote?
Doesn't matter.
So the language that we used was to mirror state statute.
I did hear that. It's just
where other communities draw that line. So again, going back to my point, before we see something on the ballot as is important to changing our governing document, the intent was to ensure that it has at least some broad support before you put something in before the voters. Right.
I know you're well into this process, and I respect, Val, that you guys have spent a long time figuring this out. Just as my read, and as a citizen, I'm looking at it and I go, wow, you're creating a spread, a significant spread of what I as a citizen need to do to bring something to the people. And it just seems to me that it might be more beneficial to work on changing the language so that before the petition is submitted, they have some sort of discussion or liaison with the city attorney, whatever, to address that problem, rather than raising the bar so that it makes their issue, hard to create change. So on one side, what I'm trying to say is I see when you make it that the city government is in control of all this, the people feel less empowered. And it strikes me that way. And I know people are smart enough to figure it out at the ballot, but I just wonder if I know it's late, so those are just my comments.
And I guess from a legal perspective, we don't have the legal authority to tell a citizen what they're putting into their petition. We might be able to have a mediation to go over it with them, but at the end of the day, it's up to the citizen to determine what that language is. And so we have little control over it in that regard. Again, the intent is right now, it's easier to amend the charter than it is to amend the ordinances. So typically you put your governing document harder to amend. We still have the ability to amend it. It's a little harder, but you still have the ability to have citizen initiated petitions for ordinance changes. That is a lower threshold because it has a lower long-term impact.
If I may, Mr. Mayor.
Please.
Also, don't forget, Robert, that what we're doing here is discussing putting it on the ballot.
Exactly.
So the citizens are going to have the ability, they're going to be the ones that decide whether they really want to do this or not.
Sure.
And I think that's kind of you would agree with that.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah. I'm sure Deb will clarify some of this at the discussion. So.
Yeah, and I guess I would caveat on the comment that you just made, and this is our city's founding document. It's very important, in terms of ordinances can be changed from time to time, but this one takes quite a bit more to change the charter. And just like our U.S. Constitution, we want to put a higher threshold on that than simple legislation in our country, right? Because it's how we govern our country, and this is how we govern our city. So.
Thank you.
So if I can just respond back to that, or ask you one more question with that. So are you finding that you have an inordinate number of these petitions that are going nowhere, clogging up the works? Is this a significant problem that you're facing from the people to make this change?
I think, and I don't want to really weigh in. I think it's, to some degree, there are some examples throughout the state where some legislation was passed with a low threshold, it came to, it was passed and then it was found to be illegal and it had to be overturned. There's I don't know if you want to touch on that, Jason. I want to give specific examples, but it's good to have a higher threshold where people better understand what they're voting for and it's being vetted.
I would just add, it's not very often in government that we can be proactive in preventing issues. This is one that we've identified as a potential issue that we can proactively solve, rather than being in the boat of, we have this language that we have to deal with. I would, and just throw it out there, I would put the state of Colorado's constitution as a good example as to what happens when there's a low threshold and everything gets put into the constitution as opposed to statutes where it belongs. Yes. And as a result, a couple of years ago, we as citizens of Colorado decided to up the ante to ensure that it is harder to change our constitution and make sure that specifically there's broad regional support across the entire state, as opposed to everybody in Denver getting to decide what the rest of us get to do. So in that regard, I would have just added, we don't have a problem now, but this is a rare opportunity to be proactive and doing a best practice before there is an issue and we're reacting like we typically do in government.
Thank you very much. That's very, very, very helpful. Thanks.
Thank you. Suzanne? I'm sorry.
Stephanie Alfieri, 402 Forest Edge Lane. I sat on the Charter Review Committee. I am adamantly opposed to this. Robert, you are absolutely right. It increases the burden on the citizens to be able to bring an issue forward for their fellow citizens to vote on. And I could understand we were trying to align it so that it was harder to change the charter versus ordinances because they were flipped and it took more signatures to put something forward to change an ordinance than it would to change the charter. So that I can understand making a line and simply getting those numbers in line. But then we increased the burden for that to the citizens as well. And we're also increasing to a majority more than just 50%, which basically says that the citizens who vote no, their vote carries more weight than the citizens that vote yes, because they only have to come up with 45% to make something not happen. Again, I'm adamantly opposed to it. There was a reason to align it so that it was harder to change the charter, but then we increased the limits for it as well. And again.
Thank you.
So would you suggest in the wording that it's the majority and not the minority? If something is taken, the majority of the people who vote on it, one way or the other, yes or no? If 51 to 48,
So
49, that's the way it goes?
yeah, exactly. The example for it is if citizens want to make something happen with this new change, if it is approved, they have to meet a higher burden even once this goes to a ballot to say, well, if 50.1% of you want that, that still isn't enough. You have to get 55% of you that want it. And basically saying that 45% of you is enough to not make something happen. And as well as the fact that to say that it increases the burden to make sure that it's an issue that's important to citizens, the way it stands right now, it's still many hundreds of signatures that you have to get for these initiatives before they even go on the ballot. It's not something that can be done with just a small group of, individuals who might want to see something change in their subdivision. Already the way it stands, you have to get a large amount of people in support of this to even get it on the ballot at the current levels.
If I can real quick, I just want to, this is our founding document, right? So, let's say that we had a majority of the community majority of the country who wanted to overturn the Second Amendment. It requires 2/3 of our states, and that's the same kind of concept we're looking at. In terms of 55%, it's much lower than our federal standard for overturning an amendment. within and this is our founding document, just like our U.S. Constitution, but at the local level or local control.
So there is a difference there, and that is it's 2/3 of elected officials. When you talk about the consensus of the states, you're not getting the input from the citizens directly. It's not a nationwide vote to change the Constitution. It's a vote based on elected officials. And that's why the limit is higher, because you're not hearing from each and every citizen. In this case, it's actually going to each individual voter and not needing a supermajority to do it, because they're able to speak for themselves, and it eliminates a lot of the doubt you might have as far as why otherwise elected officials would be voting that way.
Well, then I would take it to the state level, because at the state level, it is 55%. So at the federal level, it's even higher. At the state level, it's higher than we are. This is aligned with the state. So I'm talking amending the state constitution. So it does exist. It exists at our state level as well. And that is a direct vote versus elected officials.
Yes, but we're a home rule state. We don't necessarily follow Colorado statute. We're not a statutory town. So thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Suzanne?
Well, Neil, I want to ask a question. Suzanne, when you were deputy clerk and clerk, how many petitions were requested to get something on the ballot in your history?
In my tenure?
Yeah.
Since I've been working here at the city, I have had none.
None.
Correct.
And even with the lower standards, you've had none.
Correct. And I've been in the deputy city clerk role for 7 years.
7 years. Was there any mention prior to that with the prior clerk?
This isn't an issue. So what's happening here is like, this isn't even an issue. Noel Sawyer has just said this isn't an issue. Now, the city attorney, the city manager, they are making an issue out of this. I would vote against this initiative. One, because it's not an issue here. We are different. We are totally different than the state. We are a small, isolated community. And although I think that, you know what, if it takes a couple more votes, 50%, but you're talking, you have to get 55% of the registered voters to sign a petition. That's super hard. Oh, that would almost zero cut out anybody getting anything on a ballot. I'll tell you that much. Right now, I think it's like 700 signatures. And to get 700 signatures, trust me, you got to know some folks. You got to knock on a lot of doors the way this community is set up to find people who would actually sign that. So I think it's a terrible idea to try to lengthen this or try to make this. I agree with how that last lady put it towards Darren, because Darren tried to slide one in on us with the ninja, be like, well, the federal government does this. That's not what they really do. That's just elected delegates, elected people, Then he tried to slide another one in on the state, and she was like, but we're a home rule city, which is very much why we do things the way we do things, is because Woodland Park is different. So I would vote this one down before it even got to a ballot. But if it gets to a ballot, I'm going to push against it. But at that point, it's hard because people just they don't really pay attention. So trying to slide this one in sucks.
I know that she had petitions. The prior clerk did have initiatives and petitions brought forth. I know Kelly could
Kelly's
remember
probably
that.
got a little more history on that.
She does.
How many?
I can't tell you how many, but there
One
was
hand?
less than a handful. I can remember two.
Big handful? Or
I can remember two, but we're talking
two.
23 years ago, 24 years
So
So-
say 2 in 20 years.
that I remember. Don't quote me on that, but I remember in my tenure here with the previous city clerk, I can remember two petitions coming
So
forward.
regardless whether the the community raises the bar or doesn't raise the bar. It seems like it's a moot point at the moment. So
Thank you.
It's not, the door's not revolving.
Call for the question.
Suzanne?
Carr,
Yes.
Case,
Yes.
Levy,
Yes.
Nakarado,
Yes.
Sonier,
I'm going to vote no on this one.
Sawyer.
yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 5-1.
Great, thank you, Suzanne. Once again, thank you to the entire Charter Review Committee, all the work that was put in by everyone that was involved, and let us not forget that our task is to decide whether it goes on the ballot or not, and not to make the ultimate decision. So for those of you that have views one way or the other, the next 6-8 weeks will give you an opportunity to share those with others, and we go from there.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Just quickly, I've got a whole pros and cons and all that report. I'd be happy to help with you and Jason's construction of that. Thank you.
Sounds good. We move on to new business. And resolution number 851, and Kip, welcome.
Thank you. Resolution 851 is establishing the single-family residential water tap allotment for 2020. The city's water tap management plan sets the framework and has this requirement that every year we establish the water planning or the annual allotment. That number is derived from our available water that we have available, our existing commitments, and then how much is remaining. From that calculation, we currently have about 1,300 acre feet of water available to us. And this year we used about 711 acre feet of that water that's available. However, what's left, we calculate into a dwelling unit or a tap. So the most recent water tap planning number was 562. The tap management plan calls for 10% of that number not to exceed 60. So of that number, 562, 10% is 56. However, we also have what's called a borrow bank, and that borrow bank has never been or hasn't been used in quite some time. And there's 20 in the borrow bank. So you simply add the borrow bank to the most recent number of 56 for a total of 76. Last year's annual allotment was 80, and this year I am requesting it to be 76, for less than last year.
And what was the use just the last couple of years in this great economy? What's the most we've used?
The most we've used since I've been here is 46. In 2019, we sold 28. In 2018, we sold 39. The year before that, 46. The year before that, 26. The year before that, 17. It just keeps going down. So the 5-year average is around 31 taps a year for a 5-year average.
Any other questions for Kip? Public comment can be heard now. If anyone has any thoughts or questions for our utilities director. If not, I'll call for a motion to approve resolution 851.
I'll move to approve resolution 851 as presented.
Second.
And a second. Thank you, Suzanne.
Case,
Yes.
Levy,
Yes.
Nakarado,
Yes.
Sonier,
Yes.
Sawyer,
Yes.
Carr.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 6-0.
Thanks, Kip.
Thank you,
Always a
Council.
great
Thank
job.
you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we move on. Suzanne?
Thank you, Mayor Levy. As discussed earlier this evening, this is the resolution for the clerk to establish with the council the form of election for the April 7th, 2020 mail ballot election. We spoke about that earlier. This is a resolution stating whereas pursuant to the Home Rule Charter of the City of Woodland Park, the regular municipal election will be held on April 7th, 2020. And whereas the City Council desires to establish the form and procedures of this regular election. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Woodland Park. Section 1, that the regular municipal election for the City of Woodland Park held on April 7th, 2020 shall be conducted as a mail ballot election following the Colorado state statutes concerning mail ballot elections and utilizing rules and regulations promulgated by the Secretary of State for the conduct of mail ballot elections. Section 2, that the method of voting shall be the Secretary of State approved ES&S voting systems under the direct supervision of the designated election official for the City of Woodland Park, City Clerk Suzanne Leclerc.
Thank you, Suzanne. Council, any questions? Chatted about this earlier, so all I need is a motion to approve 852.
So moved.
Second.
Suzanne. Oh, I'm sorry, we are in public comment. Suzanne.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the second.
I
Thank
took-
you. Thank you.
Val.
Levy,
Yes.
Nacarado,
Yes.
Sonier,
Yes.
Sawyer,
Yes.
Carr,
Yes.
Case.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, thank you. We move on to reports. We only have a couple of events tonight. Thursday, January 21st, Tuesday, January 21st, from 5:30 to 7. The Chamber Business After Hours will be at the Woodland Park Aquatic Center. That should be fun.
Yes, we're excited.
Bring your Speedos, staff. Thursday, February 6th, 11:30 to 1, Chamber Lunch and Learn, Marketing Strategies at the Ute Pass Cultural Center. And as always, we thank the Chamber for all their lunch and learns throughout the year. That's it. I'll turn it over to Val.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any council liaison reports, but I want to congratulate our deputy city clerk on moving on. I think we'll have more to say about that later, but I hope she has fun up there and does some good things. It was first place I was when I got out of college, so congratulations.
Thank you. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also would like to congratulate Chrissy and thank her for all of her service. And thank you for the nice card.
Any update on
That's all.
Costa Rica? It's still there?
Costa Rica.
Yeah, I've been traveling since 1:00 in the morning to get home. It's quite a long journey, but it was lovely. Beautiful part of the world.
Welcome home.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I
Dara.
appreciate it.
The liaison report, we had a historical preservation committee meeting earlier this month. My first meeting, and I was enlightened. Thank you very much, Sally, and members of that group. They have a large agenda in front of them. One of the things that remains open is a youth liaison. And to that end, I've made a few calls and comments, and hopefully we will get that taken care of.
Sounds good. Thanks, Dar. Paul?
Yeah, thank for everyone for the hard work that they've done. I appreciate it, city and elected officials. Chrissy, you moving on. Best of luck to you. God bless. I wish you all the best. And I too have been traveling. I'm happy to be home. And my prayer is that everyone here has a wonderful new year in front of them. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Noel?
Liaison report, DDA had 2 meetings. The first meeting was a regular scheduled meeting. We talked about DDA things, so wasn't too exciting. The workshop was a little different. We had it up at the lodge. We talked about the COG rail, the COG car. What we wanted to accomplish, we accomplished one thing, is we don't want to move the car. We think it should stay there. We don't want to give it to any developers. The gentleman that did pay for the car, we want to make sure he named it for his late wife, Myrna. Thank you. And giving it to a developer, we feel that was disingenuous. So it's going to stay within the DDA. We have some developers that are still looking at the land. That's obviously being determined, worked behind the scenes. That's it. The DDA is doing well.
Thank you
That's
very
all I
much.
have. Thank you.
We move on to Jace. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you. I apologize for missing last meeting. I did want to clarify, and this is my typical time to throw in a joke to lighten the mood. I'm on oxygen just because I wanted to make sure I had plenty of hot air for tonight's meeting. But no, I got a double pneumonia and so I'm in recovery, but it's been awesome. I'm doing a lot better and I appreciate council's support over the last couple of weeks in that regard and also staff. But nothing further to add tonight.
Get well soon.
Do your wife and kids love your sense of humor?
My wife does for sure. My kids, it depends if it's at their expense or not.
Darren?
So let me start, but I know I'm going to likely defer to the rest of the staff here. Let me first start by saying we're seeing Chrissy off. She's been here for over 3 years, and she's always brought a lot of joy and smiles and even songs up in her office, up in the city manager's office. We've always, there's no person that brings probably more happiness to City Hall than Chrissy. And so she will be sorely missed, and I'll tell you, she's helped me immensely in a lot of the things that I've done. So I definitely appreciate that. I couldn't have been successful without her help and assistance. She's going on to Louisville, and she's going on to a great place. I know she will succeed there, and I wish you the best of luck, Chrissy. You will be missed. Suzanne?
So I think I'm probably the most saddest person around, maybe besides Chrissy's parents, on Chrissy leaving the city of Woodland Park and moving to Louisville. Chrissy has been by my side as the deputy city clerk for 3.5 years and has exceeded all of my expectations in everything that she's done and accomplished. I am going to miss her tremendously. She makes every single day at work. We work very, very hard, but she makes every single day at work fun. We have a good time. We work hard. I'm going to miss this. It's an extreme loss, I believe, for the city of Woodland Park, but an incredible gain for the city of Louisville. And Chrissy, I love you. Thank you.
Anyone else? Staff?
I just want to say one last thing, Chrissy. If it doesn't work out, you're always welcome back at City Hall. Just let you know.
Is it working out yet?
Okay, council, I need a motion to go into executive session.
I'll move to go into executive session.
Second.
Second.
I'm sorry, Mayor. Who made the motion? I'm very sorry. My apologies.
Okay.
I did it.
Okay. And Carr did this.
Kelly and Val.
Okay. Mayor, may I ask you to read the reason we're going into executive session, please, for the record?
Sure.
It's at the bottom of your agenda.
Sure, I got 5
Would you like
copies
mine
now.
too?
Thank you. The executive session will be for discussion of a personnel matter under CRS section 24-6-402 sub 4 sub F and not involving any specific employees who have requested discussion of the matter in an open session, any member of this body, or any elected official. The appointment of any person to fill an office of this body or of an elected official, or personnel policies that do not require the discussion of matters personal to particular employees, and the following additional details are provided for identification purposes. Check in with the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor Levy. Levy?
Yes.
Carr,
Yes.
Case,
Yes.
Nakarado,
Yes.
Soinier,
Yes.
Sawyer.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you, Suzanne. This meeting will be adjourned. Council, let's try to get started in the next 5 or 6 minutes upstairs.
So there you go. They city council, they don't play, man. They can take a meeting, but they had a lot of stuff on the agenda this week. The cool thing about it is anything and everything they were talking about today, they were voting to get those things on the ballot. So they're really bringing those before the people. It's going to make for a lengthy ballot, which means you're going to have to sit down and read. You're going to have to, don't just half-heartedly fill out your ballots. Dalton for council, hashtag 2020. Hey, thanks for joining the Underground. This has been kind of like a city council review. I don't know if I'll do these every city council, but I wanted to get these things out there so that you had a heads up on what was coming to the ballot, because all of those things passed, which means all of those things are coming to a ballot vote, and gives you a little bit of a heads up before April 7th to know what's going to happen. Thanks for watching the Underground. We'll see you guys later.